Hey y'all, welcome back to my channel. Bethany Brings Books. I am excited about this video today. I feel like it's going to be a fun, nostalgic video for me. I thought it would be fun to talk about some of the books and authors that I read growing up. I have loved to read for basically as long as I can remember. I don't even remember never reading. So I don't know what kicked off my love of reading, but I have loved to read my whole life. And I began reading Christian fiction at a very early age. Like, honestly, I was probably 9, 10, 11 when I started. I know I was at least 10 when I was reading some of these books. So yeah, I was young. Some people would probably say I was too young to be reading these. I don't know that I agree with that. I don't know really what I think about that now. I don't know. But I read a lot of these when I was very young, and I reread them throughout my teen years, throughout my preteen, teen years, early adulthood. And these are what I would say are some of the OG Christian fiction authors that I grew up on. Very classic. And I think that some of these are actually really good, and I would love to introduce new readers to some of these authors. Yeah, I will say Christian fiction has definitely come a long way. I feel like there's a lot more to offer in Christian fiction than there was when I was growing up. We see a lot more depth to it, a lot, in some aspects, a lot better writing, and other aspects, there's some of these that I feel like were fabulous writers even way back then. So yeah, there's just, I feel like it's grown and it's widened, and we just see so many different subgenres now in Christian fiction. And yeah, it's really growing, at least in my perspective. I feel like it's growing and has grown, and I've found so many authors that I really enjoy now that are newer authors to me that that I've just come across over the past few years. But I like going back to these sometimes and rereading them, and just even sometimes I'll pick one up and flip through it just to kind of skim over it and enjoy it. And so I want to talk about them today. So we're going to be talking about 5 authors that I read in the early 2000s. These are, like I said, what I would consider OG or the original Christian fiction authors, and these are all some of my favorites. So first of all, we're going to start with probably my favorite growing up, and that would be Gilbert and Lynn Morris. Now, this series in particular, the Chaney Duvall series, it has 8 books in it, and I have all of them right here. I think this is all. Most of them right here. The one of them is somewhere else. But this series in particular was one that I absolutely adored growing up. I'm rereading it now. I've read the first one, and I'm trying to start the second one. I've read like the first chapter in the second one and have gotten distracted with other books. But this series is just, I loved it growing up. I reread it a bajillion times, and honestly, y'all might think this is funny, but I literally remember as a preteen, like, panicking that when I got older, these books would be out of print and I wouldn't have my own editions. Like, I literally remember thinking that, like thinking, oh my word, by the time I get older, these books are going to be out of print and I won't have my own editions. And because I checked them out from the library, and I was just like, I literally remember me thinking I should like write down these on my, like, get pages and write down the books. Like, literally, seriously, that was how much I love these books. All right, guys, my phone cut off, so it was filling up with storage. I had to delete some apps, so we're gonna try to do this quickly before storage runs out. So anyway, this series, it was one that I loved so much. It follows a female doctor in the 1870s, I believe, late 1860s, right after the Civil War. And her name is Cheney, and I just always loved her character. I love the male character who comes into the series in this book. He is a nurse, and he joins her in her practice as a nurse. And each book just, it takes them on a different journey. Sometimes they're traveling in her job as a doctor, and there's this attraction between them that is growing, and he's not a Christian. He's just a very interesting character. And so she's a Christian. She's not going to be involved with him as he's not a Christian, but there is this attraction that grows throughout the series, and we see her developing as a character. We see him developing. He has a very fascinating childhood. He was an orphan, and he's just a fabulous character. And this whole series is just so good to me because there's so many great side characters. The writing is great. The stories are fabulous. I love the history. To me, you cannot get any better than this, really, in historical fiction, Christian fiction. It's just the plot line, the stories, the characters. There's really funny characters. There's a humor in these, and I just love them so much. And Shiloh, he is the main male character, and he was like my childhood crush. Like, I wanted to name my kid after him. Like, I was like, one day when I grow up and have kids, I'm naming one Shiloh because he was my childhood crush. And he's still, I reread this one, I'm like, he's still one of the best characters I've ever read. And I don't know, these have so much nostalgia for me, this whole series. And what was great about it was they also published this trilogy after this series ended, because, spoiler alert, not really a spoiler alert, you kind of know this, I mean, it's kind of obvious, but her and Shiloh by the end of the series, they end up getting together. Things happen and they come together, and this follows them, and I really am looking forward to rereading these. I haven't read them in years, but I'm looking forward to them. And if there's no other series in this video that gets your attention, this one should. Like, this is the one that I think you should read, and that I wish more people would read and talk about on BookTube. It's like so good. So good, guys. There's so much more I could add, but I am trying to save some space on here. So the next author is one that I'm sure y'all have heard before. If you know anything about the Christian fiction genre, particularly from years ago, Lori Wick is definitely like the OG Christian fiction author. Her books also have a huge sense of nostalgia for me. She no longer writes, but growing up, I loved her books. They were mostly historical fiction. I have a few of her series. This one is the Kensington Chronicles. This is another series that I enjoyed growing up. She also had this series, the Californians. This was also another good one. She kind of introduced me to the Marriage of Convenience storyline, I believe, because she wrote several of those, and they were so good, all of them. And I think she's what made me really like Marriage of Convenience stories. Her books definitely had more, they were a little bit more heavy, like on the physical aspect. She was a little spicy for her time period, I feel like, for her, you know, for the Christian fiction romance in that 90s era, but they were so good. She wrote so much faith into her books, so much really good faith content. She also just had really good families. Like, she could write a family storyline that would just draw you in. I don't know, she just had a unique way of writing with her characters. And one of my favorite books by her is The Princess. This is a Marriage of Convenience story. This is actually set in modern times, which when it was written, it was considered modern times, but it's not modern times now. It was written in like 1990s, I think. But this one was always really good to me. It's about a woman who marries a prince of a it's like a fictional country, and he's a widower, and she marries him for, I think, maybe political reasons. I can't remember. But anyway, it's just really good. I like that one. She has just a depth to her books, like a heart depth. I don't know how to say it, but yeah. Anyway. And then another author that I loved growing up. This series was my series. The O'Malley Family by D. Henderson. I loved this series growing up. Literally, me and my best friend, when we were like 11, 12, we would literally like go pretend like we were detectives and stuff because of this series. When I tell y'all I read these young, I read them young. But I really want to reread these. And this is not the whole series. There's like 7 or 8 books in this series. And I loved the family in this series because it was a family that each one followed a separate sibling, and they were not blood relations. They had all grown up as orphans and just kind of knit this family together. Each one was in a very fascinating job. You know, we have a hostage negotiator, a U.S. Marshal, like a forensics, I can't remember what she did, but she was someone in forensics, firefighter, a doctor. They were all really fascinating. And I think the thing I loved the most about these was just the family camaraderie and the fact that they would literally like do anything for each other and go help each other, no questions asked. I loved that growing up, and I'm due for a reread. I want to reread these and see how much I love them now. Another author that I absolutely loved, and that was, D. Henderson was a Christian suspense author. So her and Terry Blackstock were probably my 2 favorite Christian suspense authors. Terry Blackstock, this series right here did it for me. When I read this series, I loved her books from then on. This series is just my favorite of hers of all time. People talk about her If I Run series. This series, in my opinion, way better. I love the If I Run series, but this one is I just love this one because it follows different characters in a small town. There's humor in them. There's suspense. They're just, I don't know, I just loved them. You know, the first one follows a firefighter. The second one follows a detective. The third one is following like a lawyer. And we just see the characters. They're all involved in each other's lives. We see them in all of the books together. And I loved this series growing up. It was like my favorite, and probably still my favorite of hers. And this is another one that I really want to reread. And last 2, these are some that I read less. These are some that I didn't read as much as the others, but still some that I really enjoyed. And so I wanted to include them on this list. Lori Copeland, I think that's how you say her name. She, particularly this series, I loved growing up. It was The Brides of the West, and it was a whole series about mail order brides. Would I still love this today? I don't know. I have been collecting these because I want to reread them. I feel like if you like Jody Headland, you would probably like this series. All of them were about a different woman who is a mail order bride, and I loved them growing up because they were hilarious. Like, her writing was so funny, and the characters in these were so funny. I would just laugh at them. And she also did like marriage of convenience stories that I loved. And yeah, I liked this series in particular. There's more. This is not the whole series. There's like, I think 6 maybe. But each one is like Patience, Ruth, Glory. Each one is the name of one of the brides. She also had another series. It was like 4 books, and it was a Western series too about 4 brothers. I want to think the Claxton brothers. Those were good too, I think. Anyway. And then lastly, number 5, another author that I read quite a bit of growing up was Catherine Palmer. Now, I have a few different series here by her, some of these are standalone. And actually, I've noticed that some of her books are being re-released. She has a Regency series, I believe, that's being re-released. and I would love to read it again. I read it when I was young, and I've seen it like on Baker Bookhouse's website. They're releasing it. I don't know if they're going to re-release these, but yeah, this one was Wild Heather. I want to think these two, Wild Heather and English Ivy, I feel like they are. I feel like these are like a duology or something. I don't remember. But I remember reading them growing up. And then this series I remember loving growing up. Look at those old classic covers. The, oh, I don't even remember what the series was called. It was a trilogy. A Town Called Hope. This is the second and the third ones. So yeah, I had those two and I liked them growing up. These were both like kind of about, I want to think both of these were like marriage of convenience-ish stories, something like that. I don't know. They might not have both been. And then this one right here, Love's Proof by Catherine Palmer. This one, I remember this one was interesting to me. Yeah, Catherine Palmer is another one that I loved her books growing up. And like I said, I'm due for a reread of these too. See what I think about them nowadays. But so those are some of the books that I read growing up, the OG Christian fiction authors that I loved, and I think y'all should give them a chance. Give them a try if you haven't tried them. Check them out, and I think you would definitely enjoy some of these authors. If you have read any of these, I would love to know, like, did you read any of these growing up or years ago? Did you read any of these, you know, when they were being published? What did you think? Did you enjoy any of these authors? I would love to know. And if you haven't read these, what were some of your Christian fiction authors that you enjoyed reading? Some that, you know, like some of the OG ones that are not being currently published anymore. I would love to know, like, what were some of your authors? Do you have any recommendations for me? So anyway, guys, thank y'all for watching. I am just so glad to be here with y'all today, and I appreciate y'all watching, guys. Love you all. Bye bye.